The gentleman you're about to meet is someone I'm also meeting for the first time, although we started in national politics in the same year long ago, and therein lies a story. Back in 1960, Vic Gold and I were both young idealists, and we both voted for John F. Kennedy for president.
And I will faithfully execute the office of President of the United States.
Except for our awe of the Alabama football legend Bear Bryant, that's probably the last time we ever agreed on anything until now. What we have in common now is the belief that politics ain't what it used to be. I went on to serve in the Kennedy administration and then in the White House as LBJ's assistant in 1964 during the presidential campaign against the conservative Barry Goldwater. There, across the political divide from me in that campaign, was Vic Gold, who had become a speechwriter and advisor to Goldwater.
It is a cause of republicanism to ensure that power remains in the hands of the people. And so help us God, that is exactly what a Republican president will do with the help of a Republican Congress.
Goldwater won the nomination and lost the election. But the end of his campaign was the beginning of the modern conservative movement, which came to power with Ronald Reagan and was consummated with George W. Bush. Vic Gold has never forgiven me for the television ads we ran against his candidate. That was 1964. I left the White House 3 years later to atone for my sins, as Vic Gold might put it, and have been in journalism ever since. Vic Gold went into public relations and to soldier other Republican campaigns. He worked with Richard Nixon's Vice President Spiro Agnew in 1970 when Agnew took after journalists. He called us nattering nabobs of negativism. I didn't take it personally, Vic. Along the way, Vic Gold became a confidant of the first George Bush, helping in his campaigns and in the writing of the soon-to-be president's autobiography, Looking Forward, in 1987. He even wrote a political satire with his old friend Lynn Cheney, the vice president's wife, called The Body Politic. Now, however, this longtime Republican insider has written a book with the title that almost all of us who started in politics, no matter our party affiliation, wish we had claimed first, because sooner or later, most of us think the party of our youth has fallen into the wrong hands. Look at that title, Invasion of the Party Snatchers. In Vic Gold's case, the subtitle says it all, how the Holy Rollers and the neocons destroyed the GOP. Vic Gold, it's good to meet you after all these years.
Good to see you.
Do you remember what Pete Hamill said about Barry Goldwater, the very liberal journalist from New York who had been quite critical of him?
I would like to say that this is the first time I've said this publicly. It was really Pete Hamill that inspired this book.
Yeah, let me read you exactly what you quote Pete Hamill as saying in your book. No democracy can survive if it is wormy with lies and evasions. That is why we must cherish those people who have the guts to speak the truth. Mavericks, whistleblowers, disturbers of the public peace. And it's why, in spite of my own continuing, though chastened, liberal faith, I miss Barry Goldwater more than ever.
I don't know Pete Hamill. I've never met Pete Hamill. But what was going on in the Republican Party and what was going on in American politics was getting to me. And when I read that in the L.A. Times, the quote that Pete Hamill said, God, I wish we had a Barry Goldwater around now. And Hamill, being a liberal, and he still said, when I read that, I said, by God, he's right. And I worked for this guy. I am going to write something about why have we left this type of principle.
I never met Barry Goldwater. Back in 1964, he was just the guy on the other side to beat. I mean, we did see him as shooting from the hip, as mobilizing the fringe, even mobilizing the old Confederacy, and being what we thought was on the wrong side of the civil rights movement. But I came in the years to follow to admire his candor. Who's speaking like Barry Goldwater today?
I don't know if a Barry Goldwater could exist in today's political
Why?
Because the impact of the soundbite mentality, the appealing to the base, which you find in both parties. The reason is there's been a debasing, no pun intended, of the system, because if you look at these, I call them the Stepford candidates on both sides in these debates, isn't it interesting? The only two candidates who speak clearly and say yes are the ones they call the kooks. On the Democratic side, they asked Mike Gravel a question. He goes, do you think English should be the official language? You said, yes. And the rest of them say, no, not the official language, the national language. I think, well, what the devil is the national language? I mean, why don't you just say no? And on the Republican side, you have Ron Paul, who is the only candidate who is anti-war and pro-civil liberties. That is, he opposes what this administration is doing in terms of civil liberties. And they called him a kook. That's the closest thing you can get. So you can imagine Senator Goldwater, if we were right, he'd probably throw up his hands that the whole process had not run.
Why is it people running for office can't speak their mind today?
It's the system that we have reduces, when you go out, if you have to win Iowa, that means you have to come out for ethanol. And if you come out and say, I don't believe in that, that finishes it. So if you want to be a candidate, you compromise there. Then you've got to go over to New Hampshire, and you've got to sign a pledge, no taxes. If you don't say no taxes, you're going to lose New Hampshire. You get killed there. And then you will not make the cover of Time and Newsweek, and that'll ruin. So that's what does it.
You said you wrote this book because you were angry.
Mm-hmm.
Why? Why were you angry?
Goldwater did seem to be a clarion voice, a clear voice. What did Goldwater and the conservative movement at that time stand for? They stood for limited government. Now, when I say limited government, I mean limited power of government. What Arthur Schlesinger ultimately came up and discovered was the imperial presidency under Nixon. What Nixon did that I didn't like was he picked up what Lyndon Johnson and John F. Kennedy had done in terms of what I consider the imperialization of the presidency, and continued and expanded it. I thought that the Republican Party of Goldwater that believed in it, and believed, if I may say, in terms of our foreign policy, to use a discredited phrase, not America first in the terms of 1939, but America in terms of its national interest, and the fact that we would not be policemen for the world. And the neocons and the religious right have taken the party from that phrase.
Why do you feel so threatened by what you call the holy rollers and the neocons?
I am a nonconformist. I have always been a nonconformist. When I was at Goldwater, I was a nonconformist. And maybe some people might not have thought that, but we thought the conformists were on the other side. The fact is that what the religious right demands is conformity. They would like to establish, or I may say, a theocracy, purely and simply, a theocracy. That bothers me because this is the old fight that we've had. It goes back centuries between religion, church, and state. And up to now, we've had a separation of that, and I think our founding fathers have had a separation of that, but these people want to merge it.
The paradox is that the neocons, they are not religious.
Oh, but they have a mission, a benevolent hegemony. They think we have a moral mission in the world. The United States is the leading nation in the world, is the superpower of the world, has a moral mission. The French had the mission to civilize. We have the mission to democratize. And if we don't, our mission in Iraq or in Iran is to bring freedom to these people. So you're right to this extent. And by the way, you check a lot of these neocons, they're also theocons. You check the Weekly Standard in terms of its position on the theocon of the religious right issue.
Well, they've used each other.
They use each other, but they take the same position. But the fact is, these people establish a benevolent hegemony. A benevolent hegemony is the word that's used in terms of how we're going to assert, we're going to democratize, we're going to teach these people the ways all over the world, the way it should be.